Hi folks, welcome back to the shop. This video is going to be a follow-up to an article that I wrote for my blog about the Mk1 Navy utility knife. In this case we have two K-bars, and we have these are modern, and a World War II Colonial with a broken handle, which I'll explain. So the U.S. Navy asked for a bid in the beginning of World War II for a combat knife that meets this criteria. As a result, over 30 manufacturers produced Mk1 knives during World War II. And the Navy purchased somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 million of these pieces of equipment. So Mk1 combat knives, or utility knives, depending on what you want to call it, were in the U.S. Navy inventory well into the 1970s, all the way through the Vietnam War and afterwards. So these knives have been around for quite a while as a standard issue piece of military equipment. Like I said, over 30 manufacturers produced these knives, including K-Bar. These two are modern K-Bars, and Colonial. Now this is a World War II Colonial, but Colonial still makes the Mk1 knife with a molded hard rubber handle. The other company that still makes this knife is Boker, and I don't have a Boker here. For my purposes, the Mk1 is almost optimal when it comes to size. So it has 5 1/4 inch blade, and as you can see in my mitts, it's just about optimal. It's easy to choke up on for close detailed work. It's got a wide enough spine for you to be able to get a good purchase with your thumb. This one has the stacked leather handle, which this particular knife has seen a fair amount of use. Like I said, for my purposes, and my purposes frankly are homesteading and farming and general utility use. As a absolute far last criteria, I would consider this a combat knife. So 3 tours in Iraq taught me that most combat knives do combat with MRE bags and packages from home far more often than they do with other human beings. These knives are fully capable of combat, without a doubt. Like I said, so these two are K-bars. These are modern knives. Now, in my blog, when I wrote it, I was talking about this knife and that I wouldn't buy it because I didn't like the fact that the sheath is made in Taiwan. However, despite the fact that the sheath is made in Taiwan, I went ahead and got one. Mostly because I wanted the knife with the rubber molded handle. And this knife is essentially new. I haven't really done anything with it. The retention on this knife is amazing on this scabbard. And as you can see, you have to actually press on the back of the scabbard to unlock the knife. Nice scabbard. I considered making one out of Kydex, but then when I figured I was going to buy the knife anyway, I just went ahead and got the scabbard with the Taiwan scabbard. I bought this knife specifically, actually, for the scabbard. So this is an original World War II issue U.S. Navy Mk1 scabbard. As you can see, it's definitely seen its better days. This knife has been carried and used. But interesting is the markings. I don't know if you can see that or not. where it says right on the scabbard USN Mk1, and on the back side, hard to see, but BM company markings. So this is a good original, and I'm happy to say that I picked up this original Colonial Mk1 Second World War knife in busted condition, but the knife blade itself is in great shape. I picked all of it up for actually less than the scabbard is worth. So I'm going to clean this scabbard up, and I'll probably use it interchangeably with these knives as I see fit. I like these handles. If I had to choose one for, I hate the word, for grippiness, I don't even know if that's a word in English, I would probably choose the black rubber one. Now that said, I have used the leather handle knife quite a bit. I have used it to slaughter chickens and ducks, and to skin rabbits, and the handle is a little bit worn, as you can see. It's getting a little bit dirty. The shininess of it has kind of worn off. But I will say that I have used this knife. It's been covered in blood along with my hand, and cleaned it off with water and bleach, and it's holding up really well. In fact, I think it grips a little bit better now that it's not as shiny as it was. I'm not crazy about a couple of things. So I actually wrote to KA BAR and talked to him about it. And you would figure that for these knives, so MSRP, right, manufacturer suggested retail on these knives is $107. So that's kind of high for what it is. But I got both of these knives for less than $70. So that said, with a name like KA BAR and a relatively high price point, not an extremely high price point, but a relatively high price point for a production manufactured knife, you would expect fit and finish on these knives to be really good. So the first point of contention that I had with KA BAR over this knife was the pin that goes through the pommel. You can see that pretty well here. Try to get a close-up on it. In this case, the pin is pretty heavily recessed. And trying to get a good shot of it here for you. And when I got it, it wasn't blacked in. It's blacked in now. I blacked it in with a Sharpie because that's my super technical tool. But there's a pretty good indentation there. So when I got it, it was just a big silver gleaming hole. And like I said, it's not that big of a deal, right? It does not affect performance at all. And when I contacted KA BAR about it, and you'll see that the other one is not as bad, not even nearly as bad. I contacted KA BAR about it and said, hey, you know, that's kind of unsightly. And the response was, each one of those pins is put in by hand, and that's why they will differ slightly. I said, okay, you know, no problem. But I have to tell you that as a guy who hand makes knives, I don't consider that to be a really good excuse. So here's the repair part that you would, this is the part actually that is used on this knife. This is a pommel, right, a factory pommel. And this is the pin. Alright, so the pin is relatively oversized. Actually, it's quite a bit oversized. So when that pin is put in and cut off, it's not hard to grind it down even before it's coated. or even after it's coated, for crying out loud. I mean, this one looks like it was put in after it was coated, and then it was probably blackened in with a Sharpie. So I'm not buying that it's all done by hand and that's why it sucks, because it seems to me like if it's done by hand it should be better. On this one you can actually see a slight grind mark where it's clear that the craftsman who put that knife together took a little pride in ownership, took a little pride in work. This one not so much. So like I said, doesn't affect the way the knife works at all. But cosmetically, I didn't like it. So I asked K-Bar about it. The other thing I asked him about was the way this plastic edge fits, right? So if you see it, you can tell it's got a kind of a sharp angle on it, right? So it's not ground to fit. It's not flush with the guard at all. There's probably a good 1/16 of an inch there, or more. And the terrible part about that is this edge right here and these two corners are sharp. So what happens is, when you place it into your scabbard the first time, you dig a big gouge in your scabbard. And again, not that big of a deal, really isn't. It's kind of a nasty gouge. Over time it will wear. And when I asked K-Bar about it, they said, well, leather is a natural material, so it's going to, have marks on it. And which is kind of a bullshit answer, because I wasn't complaining about the scabbard. I was complaining about the edges on the edge of the handle. So absolutely not that big of a deal. So again, the complaints, are minimal. One of the complaints, of course, is that the leather sheath, which is okay, right? Not bad, is made in Mexico. So, I mean, I guess it's better than made in China, but not by much. And the plastic sheath is absolutely made in China. So, that said, it holds well. It has the rivets, so if you want to add something else to it or tie it down with paracord, you can do all that. This portion of the snap rotates, so if you're left-handed or right-handed, you can move it, or if you're going to hang it upside down, you can move it. So, but the 3 points of retention on this scabbard, I think, are worth putting up with the fact that it's made in China. However, I'm pretty certain it could be made in the United States, and I would probably pay more for the knife if it was completely U.S. made. So there's a lesson for K-Bar there. Like I said, Colonial still makes these knives. They don't make this scabbard anymore. They come with a scabbard like this. Leather scabbards, of course, I guess, are much easier to make. And the shape of the molded handle on the modern Colonials is not exactly like this. The head on the modern ones is much smaller and rounder. So the handle on this one is all broken. I'm not sure exactly what happened to this knife. I bought it this way. You would think, however, that this would be an exceptionally durable handle. So I can only imagine what terrible fate befell this knife, because it's cracked pretty darn good. In fact, you can see it up here at the top. It's cracked all the way through. My original thought about restoring this knife had to do with possibly cutting this part off right here and reusing it. But the closer that you look at it, the more you see the cracks in it. And that's just not going to be possible. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll probably try it, but I don't think that's going to work. So, slowly but surely I'm buying up Mk1 handle pieces, and this Colonial will probably wind up with a stack leather handle like this K-Bar, and like all of the camelus knives. So, one of the things about these knives that you need to know, the new K-bars, is you should not baton with them. And it's not that you can't baton with them. There's plenty of videos on YouTube of people batoning with their Mark 1s. But you will actually void your limited lifetime warranty on this knife if you baton with it. So I don't recommend it. But overall, I'm extremely happy with these two K-bar Mark 1s. Like I said, I think the size is optimal. This is not the K-bar Mark II or the K-bar Marine Corps combat knife, which is commonly referred to as a K-bar. The K-bar Mark II combat knife is considerably larger. This blade is not quite 5 1/4 inches long, and not exactly certain on the length of the handle, but by comparison, the Mark II, which is commonly referred to as a K-bar, is a much larger knife. So you see the two knives sitting side by side. There's a considerable size difference here. So on the Mark I, we're looking at just about 5 1/4 inches on the blade and 4 1/2 inches on the handle. And on the Mark II, we're looking at 7 inches on the blade and 5 inches on the handle. So just because it's made by K-bar doesn't necessarily mean it is a K-bar, by the common vernacular. So the K-bar Mark II is another very, very interesting knife, and I will do a review on this knife separately, but I just wanted to show you the difference in the size between the Mark I and the Mark II. What's also interesting is like I said, there's a difference in the shape of the pommel on the Colonial. So here's a Colonial aftermarket, a reproduction, and this shape of pommel is correct for the later models of the Colonial Mark 1s. So trying to get you a good look at that handle. Now this is clearly not the same material as the original World War II handle. This is molded plastic. This, on the other hand, is hard rubber, and there's a difference. You can definitely tell the difference. I'll also do a separate video on the Colonials, but I will say that the Colonial Repro knife is not a bad little knife. It seems a little light because the handle is plastic, but let me see if I can get the markings. Let me see where it says Colonial, Providence, Rhode Island, USN. Right, it doesn't say Mark I like the originals did, but the blade does not have the powder coating that the K-bar does. This appears to be, no kidding, manganese phosphate parkerizing. It's well done, well finished. I wouldn't think twice about carrying this knife. I'd carry it in a heartbeat. The sheath that the new knife comes with is a leather sheath. So, slightly different from the leather sheath that the K-bar comes with. So the major difference, of course, is that when you actually slide the knife into this sheath, the blade, the edge, the cutting edge of the blade is in contact with this part of the leather right here. As you see, all this stuff is from shavings from the leather. So it doesn't fit all that well. Otherwise, it seems to be, you know, a decent leather sheath. But like I said, I'll do another video just on Colonials. I also have another World War II Colonial like this that is complete. So, and I'm looking for an original World War II that looks like this as well. And then we'll talk about those in depth. Anyway, enough of me droning on about these knives. So, this was my comparison of the Mark 1s. I have to say that all of the aftermarket knives seem to be good quality knives. There's nothing that I can complain about when it comes to these knives, except for cosmetics on these K-bars. So, once again, K-bar, you know, here's an opportunity for you to step up your craftsmanship just a little bit. And one of the things I'll show you is this, like I said before, this Mark 1, the little pin that holds the pommel on is flush. It was blackened. This one was not, the one with the leather handle. And on the K-bar Mark 2, again, you'll see it's not flush and it's not blackened. So we could do that better. Alright guys and gals, I appreciate you spending your time with me. Send me your replies and comments. God bless America.